it over to Riki.
Thank you, Shinran. Nice to see you again. Nice to see all of you today. I'm Riki Teeters. I'll go back to the first slide so you can have my name. Riki Teeters, author of Conscious UX, Leading Human-Centered Design in the Age of AI, which came out in September. And I'm a senior UX designer at Amazon. I have been a UX manager for the last 4.5 years, and I recently transitioned back into the creation side of things, and I'm very happy to be there. A definite result of my year deep diving into AI and the future of UX and AI is I wanted to actually make the future myself, and be in the rooms and with the pixels. Today, I've prepared a presentation with you for you. We'll go through this. I'm going to jump around a bit. We're deep into this first 5 minutes of the intro and agenda. Our agenda today will be the top learnings from my 130 global UX interviews with UX professionals across the world, including Don Norman. And then we'll go into 4 ways to level up your UX career in the age of AI, including specific insights from my book and tactical takeaways that you can use right away. And we'll save plenty of time at the end for Q&A. So just briefly mentioning the book that I wrote. So story you'll read if you have read the book. I was laid off after 7 years at Amazon, 15 years in UX. I was the UX manager for Amazon Whole Foods at the time, and managing a really great team. I was very happy, but just due to reorg and the industry that we're in, I experienced my second layoff, which was, yes, in February or March. And that led me on a long journey of questioning after 15 years if this can happen to me. Is this the career that I want to stay in? What is AI doing to UX, and will I have a career in the future? What are the sustainable attributes for a UX professional in the age of AI? And those are the questions that led me to write my book. Along the way, I interviewed 130 professionals. As I mentioned, one of them is Shinran. That's how we met. This offered such great insight into the reality. So there's a lot that I can ask AI, and I think we can all go and ask, what is the future of UX? But it can only say so much, and it's pulling from insights that already exist. I needed fresh insights from real people. And so you'll see a theme throughout my presentation today is keeping everything human-centered. And so to write a human-centered book, I needed to talk to humans. I saw a typo on that last slide. So this is the range of where I talked to people. You can see that I did try to get a broad range of insights. And this is the spectrum in which people were falling into. So about 10% of the 130 people were AI natives. They are using AI every day in their process. They're orchestrating multiple AI tools to get a single output. 25% are AI pioneers. Those are the people that are open to AI. They're picking up AI in their processes. And then the largest group was actually the pragmatists who are selective. They're picking up tools that they know are proven to work, but ultimately they're hesitant to jump right in. And then 20% were in the skeptics group, all for good reason. So we had a lot of people who were concerned with copyright infringement of creativity getting taken away with AI, with the environmental effects of the AI tools that we're using. And all of those voices were equally important. You can go to consciousux.ai to see the people that I interviewed. I believe 121 of them gave permission for their images and names to be on my website, and you can read their bios and go check out their LinkedIns as well. And I've included quotes from all of them in my book. So starting with Don Norman. one of the most impactful interviews of my life was interviewing him. You can see here this quote, "I think the quality of life should be the first and most important criterion." And this is referring to um, how do we approach UX design in the age of AI. I included almost all of the insights that I got from him. His interview in my book, Chapter One, it comes after Chapter One, is incredibly long because everything he said was so carried such weight. And so I recommend if you pick up my book, take a look at that one. And I think you're going to get a lot of fresh insights from him. Okay, the next one, please just take a deep breath. Okay. So when I asked him, what is the future of UX? He said, "I think user experience should die." So what did he mean by that? It actually took me more than a month after my conversation with him and after he said this to fully process what does that mean in the context of what he said. He was meaning that the term in the field that he helped establish no longer meant what he intended. And specifically said, it doesn't mean what he hoped it would mean. It means I did an app or I did a website. And he meant the experience, right? So the human experience of using technology, how do we design to improve that? And I think many of us on the call, definitely I identify with having slipped into more of a screen-based role where we're creating a lot of UI and we're expected to create mock-ups, especially in big tech, without asking the deeper questions. What is this AI solving that we couldn't have solved without AI? Who are the people that we're solving this for, and are those the right people to focus on with our design solution? And are you actually doing UX if you just create a website? So you created a UX, but did you do UX? Did you follow the UX process in order to make something better? He gave me so many insights. Again, I could make this entire 1 hour presentation about the things I learned from him. But to say the point that he made up front of UX, maybe it doesn't need to be what it was in the past, and maybe we never really got it right. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to redefine what is experience design, his preferred name for what we're doing. Whatever we want to call it, does that really matter? When I asked him specifically about AI, I really loved this insight. He said we must remember that the A in AI stands for artificial. So his point is that AI, they think, but they don't think like us. They're different. And so they can be a complement if we approach them in the right way. And we can build AIs to enhance the thing that we actually need them to do differently. So where are the gaps in our process that AI can plug in and actually make us superhuman, can actually help us solve problems for customers better than we could have done without AI. And the combination will be superior to either working alone. So I really liked he's very optimistic about the future. He goes into depth about a lot of concerns. I recommend that you read the full interview. Another big insight that I have to mention is that in our interview, I asked him, where did you come up with the term user experience? First, he said he never used UX. So user experience is what he always called it. And he has been famed for having the role of user experience architect at Apple in the early 90s, which is correct. But what I didn't know, and what he didn't know, is that prior to that, a woman named Brenda Laurel had used the term user experience in her writing. And he had actually edited her writing, and a writing called Interfaces Memsys in User-Centered System Design in 1986. So quite a few years before the term UX was, or user experience was created at Apple. Brenda had used it. And that was a huge revelation. We kind of rolled past that in the interview, but when I was looking back through our notes and thinking, what does this mean for our industry? understanding where it came from was really important to me to help define where it should go and where it is going. And so you can see that she wrote a book called Computers as Theater. That's very important. And it goes back to Dawn's point earlier about UX being the whole experience, not just a UI, an app, or a website, but the experience of a human interacting with technology. And that's something that we see often in theater, as everything in the theater is meant to enhance the experience of the people in the audience. So it's a good way to compare what UX should be. So Brenda, go look her up, Brenda Laurel. She's amazing. Find her on LinkedIn, find her website. She's in my book in chapter 2. And she's also on my website, so you can find her here. So some insights from Brenda. When I asked her, where did UX come from? Where is it going? She was very blunt. She said, does it really matter? Let's just do the work. Let's make the world better. And so when we think about why is UX? Why do we exist? Why are we in the role that we're in? Why does our industry exist? It's more about making the world a better place. And however we need to adapt in the creation of the things we're making, we will adapt. But the making it a better place for humans to exist is the core of UX. And that's something to keep in mind as we continue to evolve as an industry. And then just one more quote I wanted to include from my book from Liz Danzico. She said, I think we have this opportunity because of the threat of extinction to examine the power of the profession that goes beyond the name, the letters, and the stereotypical attributes that go along with that. And so I agree. Maybe we do have this new opportunity. AI is here. It's changing the way that we create. It's changing the products that we create. It's changing our customers' expectations. So there's nothing that exists today in the same way that it did even a year ago due to AI. And so let's take that opportunity to redefine what we should be. And so as we think about what should we be, I've put together 4 recommendations for ways to level up your UX career in the age of AI. One is staying human-centered as AI takes over the world. And we'll talk about what each of these mean in a little bit of depth. 2 is to transition from a UX designer to a product builder. If you're in product design, this one specifically called out for you. If you're in another type of UX, I would say more of a generalist builder or a generalist creator rather than product builder. Number 3 is to use Gen AI in your design process. This can go throughout your entire building process, throughout research and actual building and launch, but certainly in every part of design, there are ways to leverage AI. And then to lead AI through conscious UX, and we'll talk about what that means. So number 1, stay human-centered as AI takes over. Something that's coming up in my design circles recently is synthetic users, and it's a hot topic of debate. My recommendation for staying human is even if you're bringing in synthetic users to give you early feedback, maybe it's helping you steer direction in your decision-making, I still recommend that you test with real humans to get feedback about the thing that you made in the hands of real people. I would even question if you can call yourself UX if there are no users or humans in the loop, if they haven't actually tested and given you feedback. So test with real humans. Revisit human-centered design foundations. So our North Star hasn't changed of making things good for people, making things usable and accessible, making things aesthetically pleasing and easy to use. That none of that has changed. In fact, they're even more important. Understanding who we're making it for, why we're making it, and basing our decisions on real human data through research is still core to what we do, even with AI. And always keep a human in the loop. So as we increasingly use AI, I know it's become part of my day-to-day processes. Um, you have to check the work, even when you're giving some of your human agency over to AI, when you trust it enough to get good results, you still need to be checking. Um, there are hallucinations, there's increased risk of it trying to please you and giving some false result or source, and then making a decision based on false data, even if you're providing the data. So human in the loop in research and throughout the design process, make sure that you're still the creative in control of the output. When you, number two, to transition from UX designer to builder, and again, that could be creator if we want to take it higher level for different industries, vibe code. So I know you've heard of vibe coding. I know there are upcoming lessons. Many of you have definitely done this. Some of you have heard of it and maybe you haven't tried it yet. This is the element I see making the most difference in UI development today. So give it a try. Go ahead and learn the second one there. Make your UX portfolio with a vibe coding tool. As I mentioned, I recently transitioned from UX manager to designer. And as a manager, I was a hiring manager as well. And what I was looking for UX designers, even if their project might not be AI specific, is what have they made with AI that shows me that they're adaptable to new tools, that they're out there experimenting. It's less about being an expert with a specific tool and more about having adaptable skills and a curiosity to learn. And then design and build. So show how you can use AI to solve problems for customers in new ways. So we're not just creating mockups or prototypes anymore, but with vibe coding tools like Figma Make or Lovable, there are hundreds, thousands of them. So I can't name them all right now, but vibe coding, if you haven't heard of it, I'm referring to prompt to UI generation, where it generates the design and the code. And so with those tools, designers are able to do more and be responsible for more of the process and an owner of more of the outcome. Use GenAI in your process. So I could do an entire presentation on GenAI. It's the piece of AI that I think is making the biggest impact on UX in general right now, definitely for designers. These are just a couple of things that you could do in your process that are maybe not UI specific. So you could generate personas based on real data, use an LLM to upload real data about your customers, and then ask it to create personas with their needs and expectations and test scenarios with a generative writing assistant, and then use those to design and test your experience before testing again with real customers. Make sure to always close the loop with real people. Generate images to make your mockups and prototypes. So this is super handy. You can also do this with storyboarding. So if you want specific images of the person using your design to help get stakeholders or partners on board with a design, you just generate the images. You can also make specific images with generators to make your mockups look real. And then generate product videos. This, I mentioned Sora as my favorite tool at the beginning, but Sora, Veo 3, Adobe, Firefly, there's a lot of Midjourney. There's a lot of video generators out there. I love using these to generate product videos. So you could generate a short commercial or a product ad or a demo of someone using your design before you've designed it. So you're able to bring it to life, get the vision out really quickly, and then iterate that into the actual design. And lead AI through conscious UX. So in my book, there are 9 chapters. Each of the chapters are a principle for conscious UX, and this is see through you. So compassion, inclusion, openness, and understanding are four of the chapters that I go pretty in depth. So what do those mean? Compassion is caring about the people that we're designing for. So we have an awareness of who are those people, what are their needs, how is AI solving those needs in a way that is different than the technology that we had before, if that's something we're using. Inclusion is including a diverse perspectives in your process, but also in the decision-making room. Openness is staying open to new tools, skills, and insights. And if I had to choose one top skill for people in the age of AI for sustainability for UX, it would be openness. So it is that adaptiveness to, we're going to have hundreds and thousands of new tools that we're navigating over the next couple of years. And so, yeah, we're all seeing that fatigue, but we have to stay open to learning new things and gaining new insights. And then understanding. So we have to not only understand the people that we're designing for, which is what we've been fully focused on in UX, but also the machine. So what are the capabilities of the AI? How do I design for that in order to make a better experience? And then these people and machines exist within systems. So what is the context and how do I create an experience that takes the context into account? And then I'll close up here just by going through these in a little bit of depth, and then we'll save time for Q&A. So compassion. The intention here is to reduce harm, to amplify care, and design for emotional well-being. And how can we apply compassion in UX? We can design for emotional states, not just tasks. We can actually use our design to calm people down, to slow things down, to make sure they understand the step that they're on, what comes next. If there's an error state, how do we help them accomplish the solution? We can be empathetic with our language, and we can use unintended consequences mapping and harm mapping early on to map out all of the possible negative consequences that the thing we're creating could have and design to mitigate those. And we always need to give users control, especially with sensitive data and automated decisions. This is so key as we are designing agents and using agents ourselves and giving over some of our human agency. There has to be human control to gain that control back, to take the wheel, to turn it off. Inclusion. So I mentioned we need to design with everyone as a user and also include diverse perspectives in the decision-making seats. We need diverse sampling in our research. We need that to include culture, ability, neurotype, age, tech literacy. And we can use AI to personalize our experience in better ways than we've ever done before to accommodate all of these different groups of people. Accessibility should be first, not last. So this is something that I've had in my process for many years, but it's a central part of conscious UX of designing for all as checkbox number one. And if all core needs are not met, then it doesn't launch. Also, this includes language accessibility. So if you're in the United States, the average reader is below a 6th grade reading level. We need to take into account that our users are not us and really understand the context in which they're living. AI is incredibly biased, and so that has to be part of our process, is mitigating bias. Understanding what does that mean in what we're creating? How do we track when our outputs are biased? We know they're going to exist. And so how do we track them and have solutions for getting rid of them and making them less? And then again, making sure that the people who are in high power positions are diverse. If we're creating a product for a diverse group of users, we need to have diverse decision makers all the way up the top of making decisions. The one that's not included here that is also very important is if you can have a person from the community that you're designing for as part of your research, or even better, part of your design team, that's only going to help make sure that um, you're thinking of your end user and the context. Openness, as I mentioned earlier, to me, this is the most important skill for UX in the age of AI. So practice a beginner's mind in your workflow. Instead of relying on what's worked before and what else might be true, just go ahead and try. Make a list of tools that you want to try this week and put everything else in a backlog that you'll get to someday. Run some quick explorations before committing to a direction. And when you find a tool that you like, dig in, like add that to your process. Start start a hobby of creating something. Maybe it's not work related, so that it's lighter weight, or it can be a project that you pick up, like my book or like a portfolio. That way you're using AI to create and you're learning along the way. Be tool agnostic and curious. So you don't need to master everything, but if you can master the skills of prompting and what is a good generative AI input, what are good prototyping tools and research platforms, what are some trusted people I can follow on LinkedIn that can give me good resources to keep trying new tools. And I recommend just spending, this says 10 minutes a week. It really doesn't require more time than that. Just try new tools that you see that come along, and write down what you learned from them. And yeah, you'll be picking up the skills before you know it. And you'll have something that you've created with it to show in something like a job interview. Build with experiments, not assumptions. So openness means being willing to try small bets, create micro prototypes, validate quickly with synthetic users, or go out and get real users to give you feedback. I think one of the coolest things about AI, especially vibe coding, is we can get to that prototype, like that working experience faster and get it in the hands of real people to give us feedback. And then the last one here, my book does have one more after this and then several more before, but I kind of took out the middle chunk for this presentation. The last one we'll talk about today is understanding. So again, it's understanding the context and the meaning. We can also now create context-aware UI and UX. So AI can understand the user's intent, environment, and nuance. It can actually adapt. We can design for AI to adapt to the users and actually make changes on the fly or as the user is experiencing the UX. So an example of context-aware UI would be in Sora. If you like adaptive UI would be under context-aware UI. If you like a video on Sora, instead of having the like, it actually gives you an emoji that is the topic of the video. So it understands that the user is seeing this video, this is the topic of the video, and so it's changing the UX, the UI, to match that video, which gives you the UX of like, oh, that was kind of interesting and delightful, and it knows what I'm looking at. We should ask the user for interpretation. So when we're working with AI, we often need what we're designing to understand the context in an even deeper way than before. And so if we're designing for AI, we want to design our systems to ask clarifying questions so that they can match user intent. And then with contextual preferences, Sora also does a really good job of mood-based sharing, but systems that can actually learn with our customers and adapt. We should be conducting ethnographic research. This is nothing, not something new, but something we should just do more of. So we really need to understand the context, see people interacting with the experience that we're creating, and adapt for the actual experience that they're having. And on my website, I have the 9 principles, and I created My website is vibe coded. Everything on there is vibe coded. So it's all an experiment. Again, just practicing what I preach and learning as I build. So you can go here and use this tool as you're designing, and it will ask you follow-up questions in each of these categories. And then the full book, which includes my full framework. There's the full framework on my website, and then also goes into deeper context within the book, which you can find on Amazon or on my website. And then we'll go over to questions, but just to summarize, what we talked about today is that UX is not dead, but it is rapidly changing. And what it is today is very different than what it was 1 year ago, and I would say the same for 1 year from now. It will be very different. Brenda Laurel, we can learn so much from her. Again, I recommend looking her up. Some really cool stuff is that she was already thinking of AI and experienced design in an AI context, even in the 80s and 90s. And so there's a lot of people who have actually thought about these use cases. They were thinking of them in a future context, but now we're in the era. So look back at the legends of our industry, look back at the human-centered design and early pioneers, and see what we can learn from them to leverage in this new age that we're navigating. Stay human-centered. So again, our North Star hasn't changed, but keep humans in every part of your process while leveraging AI. Use generative AI and get to vibe coding. There's so many resources out there, especially on Maven. But this is going to help you become a different type of creator, where you are really an owner of more of the process. And then yeah, use my book as a companion. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active over there, and I'm happy to answer any questions offline as well. And we'll open up to questions. Then Shinran, you have questions prepared, right?
Yes, I've also put the relevant links in the chat. As you can see, the Amazon link and Ricky's LinkedIn. So feel free to follow her on LinkedIn as well. So Ricky, I've seen there have been a few questions already in the comments. So let me start with that. The first question is from Rohit, actually. He's asking if there is some sort of transcript or part of the script to read or listen to between Dawn and you. And I believe your book already included that transcript, right?
Not the transcript, but it's an in-depth summary of it was only a 30-minute conversation, and it's a pretty long summary. So yes, in the book, but no, there's no live transcript of the conversation. But it's something I'll treasure for the rest of my life. But I'll always keep it.
All right. Another question is also from Rohit. What piece of advice we can give to young generation who wanted to build a career in UX and UI world, as we can clearly see UX role now is somehow amalgamate, if I could pronounce the name correctly, is basically as more affected by product manager or so-called AI product managers, given this kind of replacement or the trend of being impacted. What would be your advice?
I get a lot of questions from young people that are going into the industry, and I recommend the same thing to everyone, regardless of level, is build something, build your own thing, and leverage that to help you get a job if that's what you want to do. Or it's possible that the thing that you built will become your job. So by building your own thing with AI, you learn the AI skills, and you can also use that to earn money. Jobs, my guess, and I talk a lot about this in the book, is that there will be less UX jobs in the future. There will probably also be less PMs and less developers, just as AI makes the process more efficient. but I haven't seen the impact yet in terms of PMs and developers and designers becoming one role. There is a lot of conversation around that, but that's not something I'm seeing yet at Amazon. So people are still pretty much in their same roles and just leveraging AI to do their jobs better or in different ways, experimenting just the same as all of us are experimenting. But yeah, my recommendation is if you want to do it, still pursue it. But the expectation of getting a entry-level job in UX, I would focus less on that and more about how can you build something that solves problems for people, because then people will want to hire you or want to work with your business.
Yeah. I also wanted to add a note that, same with UX designers being worried about being replaced. If you look at engineers or product managers, it's hard to say that their jobs are not being threatened either. So in other words, AI has made an impact on all the professions, not just UX design. And from a certain perspective, that the designers or UX designers does have a superpower of high consciousness of what users really need and want. So that level of empathy is still something important. And the level of taste is also something that is unique, which is hard to be replaced by AI yet. Just as Liz mentioned at the very beginning of this, her quote from the very beginning of this session, because of AI, it somehow forces us to reflect on the profession, which is also a good thing. Given those AI tools, we still have to, have to stay empathetic, or probably more empathetic, as a human or as a designer. Another note is that it's also helpful to know how to interact with AI, just to building the muscle of how to leverage AI with certain amount of understanding of related roles such as product management or software development, from a very basic level. That still helps. Another question from Rohit is, can you touch upon responsible AI and ethical practices from AI UX optics?
Yes. So I actually started this book through the lens of ethical AI. And some of the first interviews that I did changed that direction. Specifically, a conversation with Babak Parvez, who is the inventor of Google Glass and one of my first directors at Amazon, or VP. I think he was VP, not director. Now he's leading a healthcare AI company, and so one of the topics that we focus mostly on is ethical AI. What does that mean? Can AI be ethical in any way? If it's trained on data that maybe people didn't give permission to give, or if it is harming communities or the environment in any way. And then a question that he posed back to me is social media ethical? Is a mobile phone ethical? And so those are good questions, are they? I would put them all in the same bucket of technology that has been good for society and has caused irreparable harm. And if approached responsibly, responsible being the first part of your question, to me, that's the better framing, responsible AI. If you are responsible as the designer for the outcome of what you're creating, that's going to change the way that you approach your design. If you are in a room where there are decision makers and then some decision is made that ultimately causes harm, but you were in that room, it is your responsibility to speak up and say this will cause harm, and here's the research I've done to say this is why, and here are the design outcomes that I've created to solve that in different ways. And so to me, my entire book ended up being framed about responsible AI and what is the responsibility of the creator. And my conclusion is, yeah, creators are responsible. If not us, then who? Certainly not some of the people that that are our partners or our decision makers that are not human-centered by profession. Like our entire profession is to understand the people we're designing for and to create a better life experience for them through technology. And so I think having responsible AI tenets or some set of responsible AI guidelines for your teams, your design team, your partner team, your business is a sustainable way to make sure that we're thinking through the consequences of what we're creating. Ethical also has another complex part of my ethics may not be your ethics, may not be all of the people's ethics on the call. And so writing out whatever that is that we decide to call it, responsible, being a probably more politically correct term, having that outlined of here's the decision, the tenets that we're making our decisions based on, and that's what we're calling our responsible AI guidelines, then at least it becomes like a tactical thing that is actually impacting the way that we make decisions and hopefully the outcome of what we create.
That's a great note. I also relate back to the term conscious that you mentioned, because it is easy to, or easier and easier just to take whatever AI suggested you as the result without questioning where that insight actually came from. So sometimes like your intention is trying to be ethical, but you might take the whatever AI generated for you as a given, and that can cause a risk of other issues. So it's always helpful to have a high level of consciousness of the result that AI provided and where did the resource, like where did the insight come from, and give it with a, take it with a grain of salt. All right, thank you for the questions. Anyone else from any questions? And feel free to comment in the chat or unmute your microphone. Either way is fine. All right, if no one has question yet, we can wait for a little bit. And I have a question for you, Ricky. When you were putting the, interviewing people, putting together the book, what is something that is unexpected? Because I believe that you had a vision when you were putting together the book. And was there any moment that like struck you hard, or something that unexpected based on the interviews that you had? I'm always into this kind of little moments or little surprises that you had.
I was changed again and again by all of the conversations, and the book itself changed dramatically. I had a full draft complete in May, and I rewrote it word for word, like it's a completely different book from like June through September when it launched is my rewrite period. And that's because each conversation made such a big impact on me. So I guess number one is in my book talking so much about inclusion, and then chapter 4 seeking, which is about seeking diverse perspectives. Along the way, before I went to real human editors, I used AI, like Claude, as an editor to give me feedback. Also ChatGPT and Gemini, like what I was getting different AI perspectives. And something they started pointing out is how you need to go through the same process that you're talking about in your design process with your book. And so I started out specifically like, who are 20 different diverse perspectives that I can run my thinking by? And I formulated my questions based on, again, the book I had already written. But the conversations each changed even my view of UX. So learning what Don thinks that UX should die and that it's not what he thought it should be in the first place, that was huge and shifted. It was dramatic. Meeting Brenda, I cried when we met, and then we had several interviews. One of them was 2.5 hours. Like I wasn't limiting these as they were going on. That one, again, that one's like in depth in my book. That one changed the way I look at UX, the way I look at creating, like what are we actually here to do? And the fact that she never fit inside a corporate mold. She's from theater. She did work at Apple, but she also worked at Atari and she worked at these like experiential companies. And so to think that that is what our industry actually initially came from, and then having people like Don with like a psychology perspective and getting more scientific. And then there were groups of HCI, and it evolved from like actually all of these different people. And before that, it evolved from human-centered creation from all kinds of different industries. So that was all a huge revelation. And then the fact that it actually, UX didn't come from software engineering. UX came from human-centered creation and psychology and sociology and ergonomics and all of these different things, but it definitely didn't evolve from software engineering. And so that was a huge revelation of like, actually, we should have never been in service to corporations or software engineers. We're here to create and make things better. And so, yes, I think it's amazing that we have a chance to reset and say, what do we want to be as an industry? Everyone is getting this opportunity. Everyone's getting shaken up. But the people I would bet on, if I were choosing a PM versus a engineer versus a UX designer as a builder, as a like this one product creator. So I would bet on the UX person that knows how to solve problems for people creatively. Like doesn't matter the tool we give them, they're going to use a human-centered design process. So all of those things, plus I learned that everyone is unhappy. Like generally, even before AI, people were unhappy in UX positions, even at the highest positions at Google and Apple and the place that I work, like pretty much everywhere. There was this sense of we're in it to make things better, yet we're limited in our power and our ownership, and people think we're just mock-up generators. And so I heard that even from a lot of people that were not yet using AI. And then we've gone through this shift this year where AI has taken over, and I see it as an opportunity to redefine and get back to the meaning that we always wanted to be here for.
Love it. I really like it.
I see more questions.
Yes, I've seen more questions coming in. Thank you for the answer, by the way. I'm quite intrigued by the the definition of UX, and it is indeed shaking up the stereotype of UX in some ways because of AI. So James asked a question: how can we identify malicious intent in UX boosted by AI?
I'm not sure fully what that means, but I'll make a high level. All AI hallucinates. Most AI is trying to make you pleased with the response, and so it's willing to lie in order to get a happy response from you. And so treat it as if it is an intern that does lie. So you need to have steps in order to check the output. It should be something that you would be willing to put your name on. Again, say that I'm responsible for this thing that I'm creating. I think when you have that sense of responsibility for the creation, even if it is AI, the tool that you're using in order to create it, it still changes the way that you're going to make it but it will be malicious, especially knowing who owns this tool that I'm using, being aware and conscious of, um, for example, I'll use Anthropic. Anthropic, Claude does a really good job of posting on their website um, what are their beliefs as a company, what are the tests that they've done with AI where it has gone bad. They publish those results, and so there's some degree of transparency with that company. So I would say look for companies that you trust, and then even ones that you trust, you need to have some gates in order to check the information and make sure that the output is um, something that you would agree with.
Mm, great. Another question, a question from Courtney is also touching base the ethical aspect. Any suggestions on the practical application of these ideas in systems or organizations that may not value responsibility, ethics, and with expectations to use AI evolving as AI evolving so quickly?
Yeah, I'll give two quick recommendations. So one is having the responsible AI guidelines written down and socialized. Even if people are disagreeing with them, like at least there's a space for those conversations to be had. At least you did your due diligence in recommending how we should be approaching it. Um, Generally, business partners and executives are wanting to move really fast with AI, as fast as possible. And so people who ask questions are seen as detractors, but don't see that as a negative. Like, see that as you did your job. Like, you are responsible for the outcome of this thing. What are you going to do in order to say that you responsibly approach the design? And then the second part, I think having some ROI on if we approach it responsibly, we'll gain the trust of our customers and it will ultimately help our business. But speaking in a language that they understand might help get buy-in for um, having some sort of agreed upon responsible or ethical approach. People might be scared of the word ethics, so it might be like reframing or rebranding what that is, but it's a shared guidelines that will ultimately help customers and the business.
Right. It feels like sometimes when you bring up UX research to some people that they can feel like this kind of tension. User research sounds like something that takes time, but if you were to say, how can we understand our users better, like in another framing, and that may lead to different like better result. Rafa's question, Ricky, you mentioned AI. By the way, I think we are actually quite close on time, so just wanted to be conscientious of your time. And I think there are two questions left. Rafa's question, you mentioned AI will bring adaptive UI and adaptive UX. Can you talk a little bit more about when could that look like and when we may start seeing the application of adaptive UI?
Sure, I'll try to make this fast. So I'm starting to see it already, in especially at AI companies. So companies like OpenAI, in ChatGPT and in Sora would be both of like two examples where I can see the UI today changing based on my customer behavior. So really quickly, ChatGPT has something called Pulse, where it's looking at your user behavior and it's actually bringing you information and actions. So I'm making short AI films. It actually brings me suggested scripts of prompts I could run through AI every morning without me having to do it. So it's adapting my front screen. It brings it to the very front of my um, interface, and so I can take action on that. And then again in Sora, like as I'm interacting with it, it knows what I'm looking at, it knows the subject of what I'm looking at, and it changes. Instead of a like icon, I see a different icon based on the subject of what I'm viewing. So it's like using AI to actually create new AI experiences. I would call it hyper personalization with AI. I see that there's another one too.
Right. Catherine's question, I think that should be our last question, what advice can you give to designers in Latin America to be considered by companies or to further develop ourselves in this industry?
I interviewed many people from Latin America. Some of the interviews you might be interested in looking at specifically are in chapter 4. The rise of the global south and using ancestral knowledge to stay human-centered with AI were some of the coolest things I learned from the people that I interviewed in Latin America. So I would say AI is hitting everyone globally. We're all navigating it at similar confusion and overwhelm. So it wouldn't be a different approach country to country. It would be experiment, stay open, build things with AI, and build things that actually solve problems for people. I think wherever you are in the world, if you follow that approach, you're following the right approach. But I would recommend looking at my interviews with Erico and Santiago as two that really stuck out as good feedback, and I have some quotes from them in my book.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Ricky, and thank you so much for your joining this event. I'll paste Ricky's LinkedIn and my LinkedIn again in the chat. So if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to get answered, feel free to reach out to Ricky and myself as well. And if you scroll up, there is a link to Ricky's book on Amazon that you can take a look.
Thanks
right.
for inviting me, and thanks everyone. Hope to connect with you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Bye. Have a great night. Or morning to some of you.